Is it recording?
Absolutely.
All right, here we are on The Blind Man in Black. And I am your host, Brian Snyder. And if you like this thing, whatever this is, rate, write a review, subscribe. And if you don't like it, send it to your opposing political party. And I'm really excited, and I'm actually nervous because I am because I feel if I say something stupid, you're sharp and you're going to be on top of me, and so I have to be very, very careful.
We're very far away from each other first, so don't worry about that.
Well, what I mean is in the sense that you'll probably verbally destroy me, so I just have to be.
Absolutely not. I will give you verbal hugs and comfort.
Okay, thank you so much. So everyone that is listening and watching, I'm here with sometimes director, artist, sometimes writer, artistic advisor, and I know I muddled that up, but I think you said I can basically say that you do anything but a butcher, and what was the other thing? A taxi
driver.
Yeah,
although that would be cool. Yeah.
Uber, Lyft.
Not yet.
So Jessica Kendall, and I want to put this in the context to everybody. Thank you for being here, by the way. This is an honor and a pleasure. 20 years, I think, since we last had a in-person conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Long time, lifetimes.
Yeah. It's crazy. And just for some context, Jessica and I went to CalArts together from 1997 to 2001. And then she disappeared, and I have no idea what she's been up to. I know she got a Ph.D., but we're going to learn about all of that. But first, how are you holding together?
Well, I'm here, which is like a really big thing to be here.
You mean on this earth?
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
In my body right now through whatever's going on around. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge to be here. So.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm with you. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to kind of start from the beginning. I want to start with the things that form the person that you are. And I know some things, and I remember some things that you told me when we were at CalArts, but I don't know a lot of things. And I want to learn more about you and what influenced your life and formed who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to learn about that stuff too. So this will be great. So I'm ready.
All right. Well, we can discover it together. So
good. Sounds good.
If I remember, you're from Baltimore,
originally.
Maryland.
Yeah.
Right.
Originally.
Yeah. And
Charm
what was it?
City.
Right. Have you been back there recently?
The last time I was back there was really pre-pandemic. I live in Montreal in Canada, in Quebec, and have been here about 5 years. And about 2 months before the pandemic started, I was back there briefly for the holidays to join my mom. So, and that was it. But I've been sort of in and out of there. And I think in the past 20 years, there was a time where I was based out of there for a few years, but I was working on tour a lot with a circus show. So I was really not there. My stuff was there, and I was there a couple of weeks out of the year. So most of the time I was on the road for those years.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up there? What was your childhood like?
I would say now in retrospect, which is probably going to be very different from whatever I may have said 20 years ago, I think it was a great curriculum. I think it was a lot of substance to learn from, should I take the opportunity. And I think the opportunity happens, learning from it happens kind of over the long run, big picture learning. So it's not a place I would raise my kids now, but I think it's also a very different place than it was when I was growing up there. And of course, all of it's contextual anyway. It was a very unique place, John Waters, home of John Waters. So,
yeah, I heard him on Mark Maron talk about Baltimore, and he still lives there now.
Yeah, I mean, it's Charm City, and I think, for me, that label has both truth and irony in it. it's very uncharming in a lot of ways. And then there's something very particular about it. If you're a Baltimorean, the owner of a show that I was working for was also originally from Baltimore, not living there anymore. But at some point he said, you've got to, when he left Baltimore, he had to take the Baltimore out of himself, because it really does kind of give you a particular foundation, I think.
What is that, do you think?
Well, I would say, I mean, really, I'm speaking to an experience of 30 years ago. Now it's super gentrified in a lot of ways. And when I go back there, I feel it's very architecturally, geographically, there's been a lot of shifting and changing in terms of the population and just kind of the general ethos of the place. It feels very different to me. But I would say crab cakes and projects and vacant houses and Old Bay seasoning. That's my answer.
Wow. So, I mean, you went directly from there to CalArts, right?
No, I lived in San Francisco for a little while.
Really? How long was that?
About a year. Yeah.
So that was like, what, 1996 or something?
I think so. I was so impressed that you knew the years that we were at CalArts. I was like, I'm going to call him the next time I have to update my CV, because I don't know any year for anything.
Yeah, it was 1997 to 2001. And yeah, I mean, a lot. That was a very, so what were you doing in San Francisco?
Well, I was welding is what I was actually doing. What did I go there for? I went there, I happened to be there. And I left Baltimore with a friend. We were traveling around the US, just traveling, camping, rock climbing, adventuring a little bit, exploring. And it was my first time on a big road trip. So it was wonderful. I mean, it was a really eye-opening and heart-opening experience in certain ways. And then when we were in San Francisco staying with friends, his car got broken into, all of our stuff got stolen. And I thought, okay, like, this is it for a while. And so I just stayed and I welded for a while and did a few other things.
Did you know how to do that before you went to San Francisco, or is that something you learned while you're there?
No. I just wanted to do it. So I found a way to do it.
Were you welding ships, or what were you welding?
I wish. That would have been so wonderful and a good story. I some things from like bed frames to front gates of houses, like nothing really, sexy in that way. So
did you have a good weld? Was it clean?
Yeah, it was pretty good. But I didn't do it for very long, less than a year. So not too experienced.
How old were you? Like 18?
I think so. Around that. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I think when I started CalArts, it was a couple of years above high school age. So.
Okay. So what made you go to CalArts?
Well, I had been in the high school for School of the Arts in Baltimore doing acting. And so, and my intention was to go to an undergrad focused on acting. And for various reasons, it happened in a very lateral way, which I think is thematic for me. So,
So what was the catalyst for that? Was it what made you want to perform?
That's a question. I don't know if I can give you a clear answer. I think there were probably, I think on some level looking back, there was like a super pure sense of being in a scene, being with other people, being really in the moment, and the sort of freedom of that, the timelessness of that when it was really on, the removal of all limitation and the spaciousness of being in that kind of environment, that kind of energetic environment, I'll put it that way. But I think, there were also other motivations that I probably wasn't aware of in terms of looking for feedback from others, looking for, validation seeking, wanting to get people to say nice things to me. I think all that was there. And I think, because we all have our stuff, right? All have our stuff that we take with us and not really seeing clearly. And in my experience, when you're doing an action out of a certain intention, aware of it or not aware of it, it's like planting seeds for that intention more than the action. So it's like if you're acting out of insecurity or acting out of need to try to get something, get affection, get, you know, something like that, then you're planting more seeds of that insecurity. And so I think at the time it was sort of a mixed bag. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I remember, and I remember from the beginning that there, I felt like there was like a shift, like you had like a transformation from when you first arrived at CalArts, and there was kind of like a almost a philosophical shift at one point, right? It seemed like, you know, when you entered, you had a certain look, and I don't even know how I would describe it. And then and
That's
then
comforting. Thanks.
no, I mean, I mean, I don't know how I would describe it. I'm not,
Yeah.
but, and then there was a shift, I think. And then, but let me start to say that one of the things that you had was this super laser focus intensity, and you were able to always access your emotions, and you're, I mean, generally always in the moment. And I remember Craig Belknap saying, like, and I thought it was one of the most beautiful compliments. He's like, he said, he was saying that it was like working with you is like working with Sigourney Weaver. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I feel like maybe he mentioned it in the interview with him. I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, you had an intensity, a charisma, a beauty about how you worked, and it was always mesmerizing. And I even remember that time in speech class where, do you remember we had to use the IPA and how it moved through our bodies? And you had that
Vaguely.
one word, the chopping block. Do you remember that?
Yeah, no, I remember that.
Yeah. And it was intense. Even that was intense.
Well, you're kind. You're very kind.
I try to be.
Yeah, it's important. It's everything. It's everything.
But yeah, I mean, it was really, it was always, and I think back on our first show together, which was basically you know, our first year we had to do Eugene O'Neill's Odd Wilderness.
Yeah.
And I played Sid, and I believe, I want to say Lily. You played Lily?
Yeah, I was gonna say Nancy. It made me think of Sid and Nancy from the Sex Pistols, but yeah, it
Right.
wasn't that. It was Lily. Yeah.
Were you kind of punk rock when you came to CalArts?
No, 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 no,
Not at all? Okay.
no.
Okay. How would you describe your kind of persona?
I don't know. I think it's hard to put yourself or put someone else in those kind of boxes, you know. I mean, I think we're all really fluid, and I couldn't really describe my persona because I was, you know, coming from the perspective of being inside my body, you know, as
Right.
myself, as my so-called self. And I would say though that, you know, I was just doing my best to hang on and to get by and to survive, you know, really at
Yeah.
that, you know, during that period of time, you know, and unaware of many things, you know.
Right.
As I probably still am now, as you know, that's life, right? What you know, what you know, you don't know, and what you don't know, you don't know. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you said survive, it reminded me of what Sarah Louise Wilson said in our conversation. You know, she did acting and art to survive. And I feel like that, you know, I felt like that's kind of how you worked as well. Like you had that, I mean, it was very committed, and it was really life or death in one sense, how you committed.
couldn't be any. Wish I had explored a little bit lower stakes, you know, during the time, a little bit easier, lighter. But I think in some way it was like, you know, looking for that moment, that being in the flow, looking for that kind of real presence that was more possible in that place for me at that time than it was in my day-to-day life. You know, looking for that was like a real survival thing, having the need for that kind of real connection with others that I wasn't really able to have outside of that space, you know. And that I could find sometimes in that space. And when I couldn't, it was extremely frustrating. But now I think, you know, over the past 20 years, and I think it's funny, Sarah had shared some photos of our time in New York together. And there was one photo of me, and I had a backpack on. And I was walking, I remember this moment very well. I was walking, you guys were all flying back to LA, and I was walking to the train station, and I was about to take a train to Charm City, to Baltimore for a couple of days. And then I was going to fly to India and spend some months in India. And sort of, I saw this photo, and I saw like that person had no idea like what was going to unfold, you know, and the sort of like unknowing and that innocence of that moment. And that like you said, I kind of disappeared, you know, but I think I just never looked back. And I think, you know, over years and many years, the capacity to be present in my life and to have deep connections with others. And, you know, you mentioned trying to be kind, you know, what the importance of that, like what that really is like a huge thing. And I think that that's something that I've found, that it's possible to live that way and not just find it in an artistic space, although that too, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your essence was one of being present. And I felt like you didn't really have a lot of time for anybody that wasn't real. Like you didn't have any time for bullshit. I felt
you could have just put a period after anybody. You didn't really have time for anybody. I think it was more like that. I think I really like, and I say this with love and kindness towards myself at that time, right? You know, but I think I really didn't, I understood it conceptually in my head, but I think I really didn't understand in my experience that other people are there and they exist and they're having their own experience as sentient beings with souls in front of me. I think I didn't get it, you know? So sorry.
I mean, no. I feel like, what I'm trying to say is I feel like when somebody was being authentic, you were there and you were, but you didn't have time for the, kind of, I guess, surface level stuff, you know, like you always kind of, you're kind of like, fuck that, you know? And I mean, I understand that, you know, because I remember we talk sometimes about Bukowski or something like that. And I get that, you know, getting to the heart of things. But yeah, I mean, how was your experience at CalArts? What, I mean, did you enjoy it? Was, you know, Sarah Louise Wilson has some things that, you know, some interesting things to say about that. And so I'm just kind of curious, what was your experience just generally?
Yeah, well, I want to say one thing to what you just said, because I think like, you know, that idea on, I mean, I can say it in reference to my own way of being at CalArts or during that time in my life, you know, of like not having time for so-called inauthentic things, you know, but I think that, and I think I was conscious of that at that time, thinking that there was something truthful about being that way or something real or something deep, you know, but after living more years than I did then, I really understand that, first of all, joy is radical, you know, being light and being, you know, not necessarily in a trivial way, but like being lighthearted and being kind and being, you know, soft with people. This is a radical thing in this world now. This is like, you know, and it takes a lot of courage, really huge courage. You know, it's a lot easier to be, you know, is stuck in this way of being so-called real when it's kind of dark or it's kind of hurtful to others, you know, or at least abrasive, you know. And so I think that mindset is very different, you know, for me now than it was. I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says a lot about our culture because, you know, going back to Bukowski, born into this, you know, the idea that we're born into a very violent culture that you know, we weren't taught nonviolent communication. We were taught how to dominate and conquer and exploit and oppress, and, you know, all part of that system. And So it's very difficult to break out of that. And it's wonderful
Mm.
that you have this consciousness of thinking about radical kindness.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I mean, we're born into this kind of culture, but we're also born into a culture where it's very individually focused. You know, if you
Yeah.
look at like I as a big capital I, it's not like a lowercase I, like, I mean, it's just right there in the
Yeah.
writing and the language. And then also into a culture where I don't want to say there's no exception to this, and it's not a critique of like any individuals, but culturally speaking, love is transactional in this culture. And
Yeah.
from the time a baby is born, you know, you get affection when you smile and when you're cute and when you're sweet, and then when you cry and you want something or you're displeasing your parent, not even consciously, there's like a rejection. And so, you know, we learn extremely quickly that to get love, or so-called love, right, like what we
Mhm.
think of as love, as an emotion or something that's exchanged, which, I mean, I don't think that's not real love, you know, that's affection. But to get that, you have to behave a certain way, and that's something that also someone can give you and someone can withhold, and you have to get it from the outside. So those are all, you know, I think on a deeper level, not that's not a reflection of the deeper reality that is really running through the world and through all things, which is we're all connected. And the love is a space that we live in. It's a spaciousness, and it's not an attachment, and it's not an aversion, and it's not a mushy gushy ooey gooey feeling. It's a expansion, and you know, it's a place where you can hold space for everything and everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, I recently reread Eric Fromm's The Art of Loving.
Okay.
And I think about him saying that the basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it's something to the effect of all of our problems can be solved basically with the act of love, you know. And I mean, he says it more eloquently than I just did, but it was I mean, I get it, you know.
Mm.
It's critical to our survival as a species, I think. um so let's go back a little bit. So CalArts, what was that like?
I feel it's funny. It's so far away temporally speaking, you know, if we're
Yeah.
talking linearly in time. And and I realized, you know, over the past year that experience is sort of like, I have a certain place for that experience. It's sort of this kind of wash of like um, understanding of what that was for me. But I think it really wasn't. It wasn't just that, you know. But I think it was. It was a time that, looking back on it, I'm really grateful for it. And I think there
Mm,
was a lot of loveliness in it that I didn't necessarily see at the time, that I
mm-hmm,
wasn't, you know, appreciative of the during the time that I was there, that we were there.
mm-hmm.
And and that over time, over a long time, and more recently, there's been a lot of kind of healing in terms of my own resentment towards myself for not being okay during that time, and my own um, sort of shame over ways that I was and who I was at the time. You know, there's been a lot of healing about that, and sometimes with individuals and sometimes just in general, because it all really happens in your own heart. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, I always thought you were kind to me. um and you know, I thought you were lovely.
Thank
um
you.
and it was always a joy to see you smile, like genuinely smile. And yeah, it was and working with you just in scenes like in when we did Mara Assad and Wilderness. That's funny, I don't think we actually did shows together, did we? Like actual,
Mm-mm.
we did class productions but not actual
Were
shows, did
you
we?
the cherry orchard?
No, that was
Oh,
Matt.
okay.
Remember
Okay.
Matt had the neck beard? You remember
I do
that?
not remember that. No.
Yeah, he had a full neck beard.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
The things that actors do.
Yeah. But yeah, I speak with love of Matt, and
Mm.
we lived together for a long time. Not as a
Mm.
couple, but I mean almost.
Okay. You want to go into that?
Yeah, I'm gonna come out now right here.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, so everyone, Matt and I were a gay couple for a long time, and
Super.
yeah, no,
Well, I love you both, and
yeah,
I would love to be the flower girl or ring bearer if there ever is an occasion.
all right.
All right.
Well, yeah, well, I think we worked through that, and so I'm married now, and he's yeah, he's doing his thing. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so that's interesting. I didn't know that you were suffering at that time. I knew you went through a lot, but I didn't know that that was you know, a generally a difficult time.
Yeah, I think that I didn't know,
Yeah.
I think I knew a little bit here and there.
Mhm.
And I will say, just because it's you and I talking here, that I always like, you were a very important person to me there. And you were sort of, there was like a time, I think it was in third year where I almost left. I almost quit.
Mm.
And you and Don Saito were the two people that kind of gave me I don't know, I think at the moment, I don't know if it would be courage, but it was more like the willpower to not run away. So I have always been grateful to you for that, because I'm glad I didn't. So
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I almost left first year.
Mm.
Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
No, what happened is I learned that I have what I have, which is Usher syndrome, and which causes blindness and deafness. And so I was going to leave. I was going to go to San Francisco State and study psychology and become a psychologist. That was my plan. And I literally told Fran, the dean of the acting school, and Craig, and I said, I'm leaving. I learned that I'm going to go blind, and so I better get ready for it. And they ended up convincing me to stay, and I did. And um, yeah, so that's how that went. So I guess I didn't really tell people about it, really.
I don't remember hearing that at all. I'm glad you
Well,
stayed.
yeah, well, it happened. What happened is during my first year, I learned that I had Usher syndrome, but it was during the summer. So all that happened during the summer. So I was like, I'm out, and then Fran and Craig called me and said you have to stay, and so that's how that went. But I guess I didn't really talk about it.
No, I don't remember it.
Yeah, yeah, of
Can I ask you something?
course.
Are
Yeah.
you're fully blind now, yeah?
For all intents and purposes, I'm blind. I mean, I have images. They're distorted, and the sun's too bright and the shadows are too dark, and it's a lot of visual noise. When we met, I was starting. I mean, I had trouble seeing in low lighting, and then I started to develop peripheral vision loss, and I would trip over things, especially in dark places. And then started developing the photopsia, which is flashing lights, and then cloudiness, and then all types of stuff. And I lost my ability to read in 2015, and then before that I stopped driving in the summer of 2008, and so I was 30. And yeah, I just decided I didn't want to hurt anybody because I didn't stop soon enough, so I stopped. And so yeah, it's been a slow process. So when we met, I was pretty much in denial, and not really going back and forth, and being open about it, and then not. And then I got into that Richard Foreman production, and then I had the first rehearsal. I was like, I don't know if I can do this, and then I quit. And so yeah, it's been a journey. It's been odd, and made some odd decisions. I think I told you that in 2005 I went into the adult film industry and wrote Pirates 2.
Oh, I don't know Pirates 2. I'm not, I'm not
Oh, you know,
but
Pirates 1.
no, not that one either. Sorry to say, but that's very, I don't know. It's a pretty amazing thing to go through. What has it been like for you experientially?
Painful. It's a
Mm,
loss, you know, it's a loss of, I mean, early on, I could escape from it, you know, and I think I was doing that even at CalArts. I mean, I was avoiding situations where I would have to explain myself, or, you know, like parties with low light, or, you know, bars or anything like that. I would avoid situations for the most part because, you know, I could feel, quote, normal, whatever that is. And and then you know, I was able to escape it for many years, but up until probably somewhere in 2017, things started to change and there was no escape. And there I was, you know, one of the things that would really help is, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what happened, I could just watch a movie or something and I could let it all go.
mm,
But, you know, starting somewhere around 2017, I couldn't do that anymore. I had to, you know, I tried to watch it and I'm like, I'm not seeing things the way I used to. And so in general, it's been a very, very, very painful loss. And I have an enormous amount of regret about not staying in the arts and acting. And even, you know, even working when I did the adult film work, working for Digital Playground, you know, that was a fear-based decision. It was because I just finished my master's at UCLA in directing. And I was like, I had a shift right when I graduated, like my eyesight changed. And I was like, fuck, this is because I was told that it was, I would have useful vision into my 50s. So I'm thinking I could drive, read up until then, but I could tell that it wasn't the case. Things were deteriorating much faster. And so I was like, oh, fuck that. In 2004, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. I have a, you know, undergraduate degree in acting and a master's in directing. What the fuck am I going to do with this? And so I was like, I'll get in because if I'm, there's no way I'm going to make it in the mainstream fast enough to make a living. And so I thought, well, maybe the adult world will do it. And I have some regrets around that for the things I, you know, saw, and you know, you know, that were sad.
mm.
And you know, but it was a fear-based decision. And you know, that's kind of been a theme, is, you know, making fear-based decisions and dealing with the outcome and the guilt and all that shit. So, but you
So
know, it's been a lot of grieving mostly. Yeah.
I don't know. It's so fascinating, to put it one way, like all the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, you know, and about our lives, and you know, the way that we frame things, you know, all the stories that, I mean, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, you know, that when we come into the world, you know, we're told who we are constantly by
Yeah.
everyone and everything around us. And a lot of those tales are internalized. And then we, you know, it's like the movie of me, you know, going over and who I am. And like, you know, because we don't know, right? You don't know if you could make it. You don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I do know this, that I think I would have had a chance had I embraced my disabilities and really been um, open about it and made fun of it. And but I was, you know, we were all born in a very ableist culture, you know,
Mm,
and so my, you know, thinking was, oh, I'm not, I can't do this because I'm going blind. What am I going to do? Just, you know, play blind characters? But even in that, there's so much that can be done.
mm-hmm,
And I wasn't thinking about that then. I was thinking like, oh, I have to do it this way, which was a very able-bodied way of thinking, is like, instead of
mm,
just adapting and doing it differently, I just kept changing. I'd go from, that's what you witnessed was me, like in my third year, was me going, oh, I can't act anymore. And then
mm,
that's why I went into directing. And you know, and I did some weird shit, and you know, like our last year when we had to do like showcases and stuff, like you know, that when that I think it was a producer from Paramount came to see us, and like I made a really horrible acting choice with Xena. I was
Okay.
supposed to be playing a very like sleazy boss, you know, trying to seduce her, and I did this weird like Steve Urkel thing, and yeah, I mean, I just you know, I was that was all like me just being scared and not knowing what the fuck to do, and being in this weird strange middle ground between making the transition. And so yeah, I mean, it's been strange. I mean, I know why I did everything I did. You know, I got into acting because I wanted to connect with my father, and you know, and then but you know, I love the process of it. You know, I think and you can tell me this because I don't know, but just the act of rehearsing, the discovery, that was my favorite part of it. The show was fun, but the
Yeah.
actual rehearsing and discovery with Lou and Craig was amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really the creative process for me, and of course, like for the past 20 years, about since I saw you, you know, there was a period of time where I was in India, and many things happened, and came back, and I shifted my trajectory into the world of circus,
Mm,
first in one way, and that way sort of morphed along the road with different serendipitous opportunities and doors opening and stuff. But I think the whole creative process, the process of writing creation as it's made. I mean, it's in circus, it's a very different creative process, or it can take many forms, different than acting. But that whole sort of sacred, it's a sacred experience. It's like gold. It's a golden experience and then to share that. I mean, that's kind of like the exclamation point on the entire sentence, which has already been written. And
yeah.
you know, yeah, I absolutely, it's a treasure, the creative process.
Yeah, and it's particularly Marat Sad with Lou Palter. That was intense and fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting to say the least.
Did I ever tell you that I went into a mental hospital like following that?
No, I'm learning all things about you right now that I had no idea. And it's so amazing that we could have spent all day, every day in a small group of people together and not known things about each other, like fundamental things.
Well, again, this happened like right before the summer, you know.
Okay.
So what happened was is I you know, I what it was really was me, because I that was the year after I learned that I had Usher syndrome. And so I was dealing with that. And I remember that period, you know, doing Mara Assad, and just the idea of being in a insane asylum and going there, it was just an odd thing. And then simultaneously dealing with my own, because my OCD started to develop at that time. And and then I remember specifically my cat. Do you remember my cat? Did you ever meet my cat, Vito? He was a gray.
I remember his name. I remember you telling tales of Vito. I don't remember any of them particularly, but I feel like I know him in spirit.
Right, right. So during that time around Mars, I was waking up in the morning, like jumping out of bed, like pacing, like something, like I was an animal or something. And I remember that happening and waking up screaming. And I also remember like my thinking that Vito wanted to kill me. And so I got, you know, I was feeling like this was not normal. And so I told the counselor at CalArts what was going on. And she's like, you need to go immediately and get checked out. And so she took me to what was it? Is it the Henry Mayo? What was that place? I
It
always fuck.
sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Valencia. It was
Mhm.
right down the street on McBean Parkway. And it was I went to their behavioral health clinic there. It wasn't a clinic, it was a hospital. And so I got checked in, and the psychiatrist immediately diagnosed me as schizophrenic. And so I was like, that's great, because my uncle was diagnosed schizophrenic and he ended up killing himself. And so I'm like, okay, repeating the cycle again. Here we go. And so I was in there for a couple days, self-admitted, and then I checked out, and fortunately I discovered that I went to another psychiatrist, and he said, no, you're not schizophrenic. You're depressed and you have psychotic symptoms. And so that was a relief. And I didn't, so, but yeah, that all that happened like right after Mara Assad was that. And then I started, going on antidepressants and that shit. And yeah.
How do you relate to that time period for you? Like, do you feel like that's far from you, or do you feel like I think it's brilliant that you're speaking about it. I mean, openly. I think that that's something that not enough people do.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everything is like a dream to me now, because I think maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I was a very, very visually, um, I guess I would say visually orientated person, in the sense that my whole reality was wrapped up in how I saw the world through my eyes, and especially who I was, and how I related to other people. And so my self-actualization was through my eyesight. And so when I started to lose that, everything started to becoming more and more like a dream. And even now, I mean, I talk about this where I feel like I'm not here. I feel like I'm a living ghost, and I literally have to grab things sometimes to know that I'm here, because it feels so surreal, especially the things that how my eyesight is deteriorated. It's a very strange view, to say the least. And it's not total darkness, which would, I think, would be, in one sense, be a little easier. It's very distorted, and it's almost like a Brechtian distancing device, where it distances me from reality. And that was one of the things when I met my wife, is that she helped tether me to the world again. She made me feel alive again. And so that was something that was that changed everything in many ways. But it also causes problems too, because I'm dependent upon that to some degree, because it's like that sense of feeling alive is through her. So I have to be mindful of that and careful that. And so, but to answer your question, mainly, it seems like a dream. It seems like I'm not the same person, really. And in many ways, I don't even know how to begin to describe it. But in some ways, I'm same. I mean, I remember discovering George Carlin at that time and being very enamored with his comedy, and that has always been like a very like critical point in my life as a reference point of how I view the world. And so, yeah, it's a very strange existence, because I think for me, and what I meant to say, it may be just my own brain, but um, how I perceive things and memories the way they are now, I think are distorted, and they're not as vivid, because I don't have that constant visual feedback. So I think if maybe it's me, but I maybe others as well, but the sense that I think our memories are more vivid because we're constantly being fed visual feedback throughout the day. So, it's reinforced all the time, but it's slowly been slipping away. And so my memories are just as distorted as my own eyesight as it is now. This is light stuff. This is all very light.
Super light. Yeah, super light.
So go ahead. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
Because one thing that I was curious about for your experience was about your relationship to sound. If your relationship to sound around you has changed since you lost your vision.
Yeah, but it's been shitty. Because I have hearing loss, and I had it then.
Oh, okay. I remember that. Yeah.
In the sense that, like, I didn't know this until I lost my ability to do it. I was subconsciously reading people's lips to make up for what I could not hear. And I didn't know that until my eyesight diminished to the point where I wasn't able to do that. I'm like, so I have a 30% hearing loss, which is about the same as when I was there. It's just, I think I was compensating for what I couldn't hear by reading people's lips. And so my hearing, I think it's a myth that, people say that your hearing becomes strengthened or senses in general. It's not really that. You just focus on one more than the other. And sometimes I literally have to close my eyes just so I can focus on hearing, because the visual noise that I have now is so much, it's so distracting. That's part of the reasons why I'm wearing sunglasses, is because I don't want to be gazing at the screen and just seeing nothing and distorted, because it's distracting. So I put on the sunglasses and my eyes are closed right now so that I can listen to you. And so that's kind of how I operate. But I mean, if I had normal hearing, I think things would be a little bit different. But I have to struggle to hear. So, but it's just part of the process.
You're making me think. Many years ago, I did a year of anthropology classes at UC Berkeley to make this sort of transition into researching circus in an anthropological way. And I took a medical anthropology class, and I had to do a case study on someone. And I was outside at a park by the water in Berkeley, and I met this woman who was probably in her late 60s, and I was fascinated. I watched her. She was walking like complete Buto slow motion, like so slow. And so she came and sat with me eventually, and we started talking, and I wound up doing this case study on her. But she had her hips, she was supposed to get them replaced, and she refused the replacements. So she was learning to live with like the deterioration of her joints, to the point where she just like, she had to change her whole way of being in the world. I mean, she didn't change it, it changed, and she just adapted to it. And it was very interesting to hear her speak, and that there were ways, in some ways it was, she saw the opportunity in it. Like in some ways it brought her maybe moments of noticing something that she would have passed by, but because she was moving so slow in space, her attention was on something that was delicate or refined. But then, then also came for her like the decision-making capacity of like, when you want to get up and get something, like how you decide whether it's important or it's not important. And in terms of her kinesthetic sense in the world, it was totally shifted, and just her existential way of being in the world was completely transformed. It was very interesting, although I'm definitely sure not easy.
Yeah, I mean, disability, as Ed Roberts said, is an equal opportunity club. Anybody can become a member at any time. And I think in one sense, and this is a generalization, I think if you're born with a disability, there isn't as much of an adaptation process. When you become disabled, you have to grieve the loss, because you know what you had before. So it's an odd experience. So, I mean, I talked to, like, for instance, when I had guide dog training, I remember one of the individuals in the guide dog class left, and she was my age and had a similar condition, but she was still grieving her loss and wasn't kind of ready to do that. And there was somebody in there that was pretty much born blind, and they had a lot of empathy and said, oh, I can imagine that it would be more difficult to lose it later on than to be born with it, So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's the experience varies depending on the person and their support system and so on. But yeah. So what about India?
What about India? What do you want to know?
What was that like? What did you do?
Well, that was a very big shift in my life, came from that experience there. I went there not knowing. We were graduating. My mom had said she would buy me a ticket wherever I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Egypt, actually. I had wanted to go to Egypt for a long time. and had good connections there. And just intuitively, it felt like that is not the right place to go. And I sort of had this interior battle for a few months where I was like, but I really want to go to Egypt. And, but I knew just my instinct was like, nope. And my instinct was like, go to India. I knew nothing about India. I had no interest in it. I had no prior knowledge of it. I didn't have anybody there. But I listened to it after a few months of fighting with myself, because I know that instinct is the way to go. And I wound up, I was there almost 4 months. It was amazing. I wound up staying for a good portion of that time at the Dalai Lama's temple. He gave teaching.
Oh, wow.
There. Yeah, it was like this very sort of serendipitous thing. I didn't try to do that. I didn't plan it. This was all pre-cell phone, which I don't have now anyway, but I had a little guidebook. And right from the beginning, I had someone welcome me there who I didn't expect that I would have anyone there, and they took me into their home, and they pointed me in a certain direction, and I went to Dharamsala, which is where the Dalai Lama's temple is, but I wasn't thinking about going there. I wasn't thinking about, I just was following my guts. And I went there, I was looking for this little guest house, and I kept getting lost and circling around. And Dharamsala is like a hill station in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I kept winding up at the bottom of this same little dirt road, like 3 times. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk up there because I keep getting there. And I walked up there. It's the Dalai Lama's temple, which I didn't know. And then I thought, well, just ask them, do they have a place for me to stay? And they did, and which was like super rare. I don't think now that's even possible. And he happens to be giving these teachings, these 10 days of teachings on the Tantra for some Korean groups that had to come to India. So I stayed for that. I stayed there, and I spent part of my time there, part of my time at a Tibetan nunnery, and then went down on the Ganga River and studied some yoga with a teacher for a while. This was all when 9/11 happened. And I was there when that happened. And then my dad died a couple of days later. So
oh no.
When I came back, it was, already that had sort of spun my life a bit. And coming back, I took time because at that time it was there were no planes flying into the States, and actually I was supposed to be on a flight that landed in New York at JFK on September 11th at 9:30 in the morning. And the day before, I changed my ticket. I was like, I'm not going to get on that flight. And I changed my ticket to stay longer.
What made you change it?
No premonition or anything like that. I just know I'm not getting on that flight. I don't know.
Okay.
I think that my decision making a lot of times is just instinctive. So
Did you meet the Dalai Lama?
I did. I mean, he has no idea who I am, but yes, I was able to greet him and meet him and not talk or anything like that.
Wow.
And the Karmapa, at the time I didn't even know who the Karmapa was. And so lots of grace in that experience. And somehow during that time, I had this feeling that I should move into the world of circus for various reasons. I was thinking to do it as a performer, as like a physical theater performer. And that was in the back of my mind when I returned to the States. I wound up getting back in time for my father's funeral and a few hours before, and on the first, I think, France flight back, and came and was able to stay in Charm City for about 6 months. And then the right moment happened for me to go to San Francisco. I moved there for a while. And then things started to go very strongly in a certain way, and I followed it.
Now, how did your father's passing affect you?
It was a very, very interesting experience because I had been almost 4 months in India, and I had spent most of that time with Tibetan refugees who had, first of all, to be there, had traversed, the Himalayas in the winter. A lot of them had been imprisoned. A lot of them were monks, nuns, and had, suffered unbearable sufferings and had incredible strength in their spiritual life. And so, retrospectively and even immediately, like quite immediately, I understood very clearly that experience in India prepared me for the death of my father, unlike anything could have, because it gave me just a very, I would say, a different center on what was happening. My immediate thoughts when I found out that my dad had died, because I didn't have a phone, there was no way to get a hold of me. My mother had been, trying to email me for a week and a half, actually, before I got it. And I called her. I knew when I saw the email, I just knew. And so I kind of just sat for a little bit and prepared myself, because I knew where I was logistically wasn't so simple to get back. And I called her, and it was in the middle of the night where she was. And as soon as she said my name, I definitely knew. And I said, just stop. I don't want you to have to say what you're going to have to say. I just want to say it to you, and you tell me if I'm right, because I felt like my poor mother is like on the other side of the world, and she's going to have to give me this news, knowing that I'm in India. And, so it was right. And it was peaceful. And my immediate, and of course I understand, I cried, I had grief. It hurt, because you're losing the bodily presence of, like, it's like someone takes the sun out of the sky, like something that's been this referential point, for you in your life. But my immediate thought was happiness for him. Actually, he died peacefully. I knew I was very close to him before he died, and I knew he was ready, ready to go. And I felt great peace for him. And when I came back into the States, it was very interesting, because to see my family kind of struggle, go through like a deep emotional struggle about his death, but I was not there. I felt like I was in a different world about it because of where I had been. And as I said, I grieved. I mean, I spent time being in his physical space. And of course, grief hits you in ways that are always surprising, going into a grocery store that I never would have thought of, that I used to go with him in, would bring tears. And I did my best to be as open as possible to the experience that was in front of me, and to completely embrace what it was, and to be as present as possible. And in the ritual, I was the pallbearer, and I spoke at his funeral. And, I really tried to relate and be with the experience and hear the stories about him from his friends. And I really feel like there was a lot of grace in it. It was hurtful, but it was also a very graceful experience. But I had a hard time relating with others around me, because they weren't going through similar things.
Yeah, I can imagine that was painful. I remember you talking about him when we were at CalArts. So what did he do most of his life?
He was before I was born, he was a police officer. And then he was Department of, I think, the director of investigation at the MVA for the government. Okay.
So you went to San Francisco, and is that where you started looking into going into the circus?
Yeah, I went there very particularly to go to a circus school that was there. And I started doing some classes there and doing some acrobatic stuff there. And I was there doing that for a while. And then I went abroad to Europe to see what was out there. Because when you're in this circus school and you're training in this space, and the reality of what that training is day to day is incredibly different from what it looks like to an outsider who's going to see a show, like no concept of what that life is. But I wanted to see what was out there in the world. And so I went to Europe for a few months, and was in Denmark staying with a friend of mine who was an anthropologist. And it was winter and it was cold, and we were like huddled up in her flat for a while and talking. And she had just come back from Syria. She had done her field work in Syria, and she came back and we were talking about that and my life. And she said, you really talk about circus like an anthropologist. You think about it like an anthropologist. You should do something. And it was a very like passing comment. It was nothing serious, but somehow it like sparked something when she said it, So that was there. And then I continued on my travels and wound up changing course and going to taking a boat to Lithuania to kind of find my heritage is there and to kind of see what was there and just going that way for a while. I met up with her again in the UK in London, and she wanted to go to this library, which has this extensive Arabic language collection. And so she asked me to come. And as soon as I walked into the door, I just felt like I have to go to the school and I have to do that. There was nothing more than that. It was very clear. And when I went back home, I really shifted what I was doing. I started taking anthropology courses and started doing small projects at the circus school anthropologically, just to kind of see how it was going to work. And wound up applying to that school and got into it as a master's student and moved to London. And immediately decided after like 2 days, academia is not for me. I do not want to do this, like not at all. Right. But I had already invested in, it was a 1-year program. So I thought, well, I'll just do it. It's 1 year. It's okay, And for whatever reason, because I wound up getting into this PhD program, but it was very sort of, I would say lateral, more like accidental. It was a complete accident in some ways. I was trying to take certain classes that I wanted to take, and there was some interdepartmental conflict and I couldn't. So I was trying to find a way around that. And I found this other master's that I could switch into. And it was called a master's in anthropological research methods. You were supposed to have a master's already to get into it. I did not, of course, and had no real academic background. And just talked to the person who ran the program and said, I want to do this and I want to do, and she said, where do you want to research circus? And I said, China, because my teachers were from China. So it was very like, I don't know, there's my answer. And she let me in. And then I thought, well, I'm doing the first year of a PhD, but it's just for me to do the classes I want, really. So, but I had to go through these motions of research proposal, applying for funding. And at some point, because my project was framed very differently. I didn't have an academic background. The way I looked at things was very different. I think having a creative background was very helpful. And also, to be honest, I think at that point, a lack of investment in the academic world was also very helpful because I was really free of like caring about any of it. And
that pressure to produce,
No, it was not there. And the people in my class certainly had it. They were all academics. They all wanted it really bad. And I was like, whatever,
Yeah.
And I was doing my funding proposals and they were very short. I mean, at the time I thought it was giving birth, but it was like 1 page. It was nothing. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And my colleague was like, Jess, your project is really cool. Just finish it and send it off. And I did. And I got almost everything I applied for financially for years of research. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of like opening doors for me that were very hard for other people to open. And I went to China. I had some friends who were acrobats who were training there at the time. So I thought, I'll just go for a month, see what it's like, and everything kind of just fell into place extremely easily. I mean, it was like here, So then I just followed that. And that's how I went up on that track.
Now, did you finish your PhD?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what was your dissertation on?
What was it called, or what's sort of
the subject
essence of it?
Yeah.
I followed a group of Ethiopian circus performers who were training in China on cultural exchange in Chinese acrobatics. I followed them looking at their training in an international government-sponsored context. And then I followed them on a tour, an African-themed circus tour in Europe. And then I followed them back to Ethiopia. So I was looking at how at that time, that particular group of people built international careers and what they had to do and what they came up against. And yeah, it was very ethnographic. It was very much like, I mean, it's like a story for kindergartners. It's really storytelling. It's much less theoretical than most PhDs are, but that's the way I like to do it. So
now, what in your view did you gather from your travels around the world? What is the one thing that you took away from it that kind of stays with you to this day, like meeting people from all over the world?
One thing that I took away from it, I mean, I think that I could answer that on different levels. Like
Sure.
on a personal level, that adaptation and connection is very important. And I would say that that's one thing. On a bigger level, I would say that I think it's useful to make the strange familiar and the familiar strange in any context.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the fact that people are all really wanting the same things, but our positioning really changes how we have to negotiate those things in this world.
Mm-hmm.
On a certain level, on the level of like relative reality, everyday experience, you know, the sort of surface level of how people live.
Mm-hmm. So now when you were thinking about it, sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were thinking of actually doing performing in the circus at one point.
Originally.
Was there like a type of act that you were thinking of engaging in?
Well, originally my idea was to do physical theater in circus, and you had so-called new circus like Cirque du Soleil and Quebecois circuses that were coming up around that time, Seven Fingers, and this was possible in ways that it wasn't in the same way in so-called traditional circus. And I was also I trained some partner acrobatics as a base, like basing another person, and on vertical rope, some aerial stuff, but basic, nothing high level.
Wow. So what are you doing now in the circus?
In the circus, I am actually, this pandemic experience has really been interesting. And it's also, my mother was actually dying during the pandemic. And so I really, you're.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Is she still with us?
No, she left her body at the end of last year. And
my condolences for your loss.
Thank you. I mean, it was really, heartachingly beautiful in some ways, and then just heartaching in other ways, and then just beautiful in some ways, because it was, I think she died of cancer. She didn't die of COVID. And she was on hospice for about 4 months. But my orientation during this time has really shifted. And so all of the stuff in the circus world for me is like, it's not in my immediate reality right now. And if it will be and how it will be, I'm not sure. But I don't feel a gravitation towards it right now at this moment. I was really with her, as much as I could be with her as she was dying, even though we physically weren't together. We used technology to be together, and for me to sit with her, to sing to her, to read to her. My daughter, one of them is a violinist, and she would play for her for many hours every day. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was. And to sort of walk her through that experience as much as I could.
So you have a family now. And what was it like becoming a mother? And when did that happen?
Yeah. When did that happen? My oldest is 12, almost 13.
Okay.
So it happened that many years ago. But I think I've actually really become a real mother in the past couple of years. I was a mother, but now I feel, okay, I'm really a mom.
Was it planned or?
Was it planned? No, not specifically, but it was something that I was open to.
Okay.
So I'll say it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that it's definitely, they're definitely my teachers. They're definitely my teachers. And it's amazing. And it's the most difficult shit in the world. And people don't talk about the reality of what it is to be a parent, and particularly a mom. I think there's a lot of ideas about what a mother is, what a mother should be. And right from the birthing experience, you know, all the way through the actual experience of the day-to-day of being with kids, you know. But it's very, I mean, to me, it shows me, I welcome it as much as possible because it shows me my shit as quickly as possible. It shows me my strengths. It shows me my weaknesses. It makes it all very clear, and you cannot run away. And some people do, but you never really can, I think, anyway.
So what would you say from the Jessica that I knew and how you are now as a mother, how did becoming a mother change you? Was it just awareness of yourself, or was there something else?
I think on some level in this world, my kids are really the thing that I could never leave. Like, I think that on some level, everything else, not that I would leave everything else, but there would be a point where I could do it. But with them, so I think that this kind of commitment has been huge for me. And I would say also to like see that, like, because they're all superheroes, right? Like kids are just superheroes. Like they have these super abilities, and like if you can give them space and you can see it and you can kind of just help support whatever it is that they need to develop themselves, because essentially that's what they do if you let them, that they all become amazing folks in the world. And to see that and to recognize that we were all that, and that kind of open-heartedness that we all still have, that, you know, like that's still there. Maybe the access has been cut off, you know, maybe there's some gates put up and locked somewhere, you know, but that way of being with others, where you're not pushing reality away, or you're not trying to fix reality to be what you want it to be, that's available to us at any point, is that realization, that experiential realization, not conceptual realization, I think has been taken time for me to grasp and see but to see the real profundity in it, and to know that at any given moment, in any given day, at any time, in relationship to the present moment, or even in relationship to the past or the memory or the hope for the future, that there's a possibility just to let go and to let be what is, and that's all that there really is. So
yeah, I was reading Lenny Bruce's autobiography, and that was like a main theme of just accepting what is. And I've been thinking about that a lot in my own life. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, you know.
There's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's do you know who Pema Chodron is?
I don't think so.
Okay, she's written a lot. She's a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She's not Tibetan herself in her own ethnic origin, but she's based in Nova Scotia. But she's written a lot of really lovely books. And she was talking about her teacher Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and that the first main teaching that she got from him was that anything, whatever's right in front of you, whatever it is, whether you want it, you hate it, you love it, you want to kick it away, it makes you sad, it makes you happy, whatever it is not just okay, but it is your best way forward. And that for me has been a very useful thing to take comfort in, that whatever's in front of me, however it looks, is actually the best way forward, not just a way that I can deal with, but the best way. And it's not easy to, to open up to that. But when I've been able to open up to that, it's been really incredible, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I should think about that because I mean, I'm living in the Northern California
Mm.
and the fires are raging all around. Like we just
Mm.
had one that could have destroyed our town here on Wednesday.
I'm glad
Look,
you're okay.
thank you, thank you. And then we also have the worst uh, number. I mean, a large number of Delta variant cases
Mm-hmm.
in our county here. I think it's the worst
Mm-hmm.
in California.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think about there's just that's that. I'm glad you mentioned that because it's something to think about. Like this is
Mm.
the in the midst of all this. I
Mm.
mean, I kind of came to a realization a few months ago about like I have a lot of insecurities about being a father and a husband, and especially being blind. And I kind of had an epiphany. I'm going through a shift in my vision loss, so I think it was part of that. And I just the thing that came to mind is it doesn't really matter what I do as long as I do them with love and be an
Mm.
example of love and kindness and empathy and I appreciate you saying that because that's another way to appreciate the existence that we're in. Um, so
Mm.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you miss acting?
I don't know. I don't, sometimes I've stopped kind of along the years and asked myself that question. And I don't, not deeply, I think.
Mm-hmm,
I sometimes I've missed the position of being in the space of creation with others in that way, because
mm-hmm,
directing or creating or assisting directing or artistic advisory is is in it, but not in it in that way. It's in it in a different
mm.
way. And so sometimes I miss that part of it, but no, I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, no. I
I hear you.
said it
Okay.
enough times. Okay.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. No.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
And first, the first question is, if you could speak to everyone on earth simultaneously, whisper into their ears, like if you were some type of by the way, let me go back before I ask this question. Are you
Okay.
are you practicing Buddhism? Or is that or do you have
I, I
like a
don't I don't associate myself with any kind of lineage or anything particular that way. I have some
mm,
teachers, some are in the Buddhist tradition and some are not. They're in other
mm.
traditions. And so I take what I can get.
when when I was living with Matthew Dittman,
Hmm.
I started practicing Zen Buddhism,
Hmm.
and then I transitioned, and I was kind of studying Tibetan Buddhism, and then I actually got pretty immersed in the Nichiren Buddhism, uh,
Hmm.
and and then I did that for a long time for about 6 years, and it was mainly my last attempt at trying to not commit suicide, but 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 it to some degree it worked because I'm still here, but
Hmm.
it was my way of reaching for something, and so yeah, I thought it was so I thought okay, so there's a parallel there with Buddhism.
Yeah.
Huh.
Do you know Menger Rinpoche? Have you read any of his stuff or heard
The
him?
name I've heard, I think.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
Right. Anything in particular?
No, I mean, I think in the pandemic, there's so much available online
Hmm.
that, for me, I just, when I'm able to do teachings with him or some other folks, I do them.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
send me some links. I'd
Sure.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's super clear. He's super
Mm.
clear. He's super sharp. He's really funny. He's really, he's powerful. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get back to my question. So if you could
Okay.
speak to everyone on earth simultaneously, what would you say to them?
I wouldn't say anything. I would just be with them. I would just be open with them.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What would be on your gravestone, your epitaph?
I'm going to be cremated, so I don't think that's relevant.
What would your epitaph be though, if you hypothetically?
I mean, I'm not writing it, right? So like that's up to whoever writes it, right? You know?
Well, Bukowski's is don't try, right? And
Mm.
um no, but by the way, that was a perfect Jessica Kendall response.
Uh-oh.
That's the Jessica that I remember.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
thank
don't
you.
know. Because I think it depends on when I die, right? If I had died
Right.
20 years ago, it would have been one thing. If I die now, it's going to be something else. But if I live for 30 years, it'll be something else, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Well, so is there any projects you're working on that you'd like to share with us, or anything that any website or anything that
No, I'm offline a lot in that way. And I think like
mm,
right now I'm saying this because you talked about practicing Buddhism, or having an interest in Buddhism, but I'm kind of in a bardo in that way creatively, you know,
mm,
that it's, you know, sitting with my mom's and being with her when she left her body and kind of being through that. And really, I think it's pointed me during this time to go, I mean, it was pointing me to go internally before, you know, before she was diagnosed, but to really take this time, this period of time in the world to be really inside myself and to be really with my kids in a very palpable way. So there's nothing that I'm doing at this moment in time. In
okay.
the future, I know that'll change, but not now.
So just briefly, you don't have to go in depth if you don't want,
Yeah.
but I'm curious. So are you kind of going off the grid to some degree? Like you said, you have
I
no
have been,
mobile phone?
yeah, I have been. I haven't had a cell phone in a couple of years. Even when I was working creatively here, I avoided it. Since we moved to Montreal, I avoided it.
Hmm.
Um, I think I had one occasionally. I would fill it with credit and use it, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I stay away from social media right now, and
I remember
yeah,
you were on Facebook for a while and then
yeah,
you
I
went
was. I
away.
was.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like for me personally, it's not a judgment because certainly through this pandemic, I've used technology to gain access to learn from people that I never would have had the opportunity to, and these types of things. Or like, you know, I do have a teacher I do go see in person a couple times a year, but you know, through this experience, I've been able to, you know, hang out with him every week, and you know,
Mm,
it's been, so I use technology in that way. But I feel for me personally, it's healthier, and
mm,
during this time, it's much healthier for me to be present in the body with my kids when they're in their
mm,
bodies. And because you know, we're all going to have to let go eventually of body and everything, you know,
yeah.
it's all going to be gone.
Mm,
But it's a precious thing. It's a precious thing to have, to be able to access. And despite all the wonderfulness of online offering, it also is not real. Not that
mm,
this is real either, but you know,
mhm.
it's fleshier at least.
Right. Right. No, I hear you. I go back and forth. I've had times when I've wanted to be completely off the grid, but being blind makes that very, very difficult because
Hmm.
you know, I'm dependent upon this to let me know what's happening.
I assume you're petting a dog.
No, it's my
Oh,
phone.
oh,
It's
it's your phone.
it's my
Okay.
screen reader.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know what you were
Mm,
touching.
yeah, I would love to write letters and and be off the grid, but it's yeah, it's difficult. And
Hmm.
you know, I have a lot of mixed emotions about it that are very conflicting. But no, I understand. And if I was able to, I would for sure. I wanted to just kind of live off in the woods and have an organic farm and you know do that. But it's yeah, it's very difficult. I did work on a farm for a season and I loved it and it was beautiful and but yeah, I'm not sure how I would be able to do it now, but I'm sure there is a way. I just have to find it. But But thank you so much for being here and sharing what is alive within you. I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity to reconnect after 20 years. It's been a long time, too long. And I deeply miss you and love you, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I mean, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm really happy to see you where you are right now, exactly as you are doing what you're doing. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And the
Yeah.
feeling is very, very mutual. And yeah, we should do this again. I'd like to know, because I know that it seems like you're constantly evolving and things change. And I'd like to see what happens next.
Me too. I can't wait.
All right. Well,
All
thank you for
right.
being here. This
Peace.
was The Blind Man in Black. I am your host. If you like the show, please rate, subscribe, and review. And if you want to see my wife and I be obnoxious to each other and exhausting, go to TikTok and watch the Exhausting Snyders. And thank you so much, Jessica Kendall. Deeply appreciate it. Please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to have our awkward ending.
All right.